Have an agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, any discussion? Hearing none. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Our first agenda item is Lacey Life Overview. Donna, take it away.
Thanks for having us here today. Appreciate that. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to talk about kind of the past Lacey life, the current, and then potential future that we're looking to potentially move forward. So let's see, here we go.
The far bottom corner over the podium. Okay. I'm gonna start that for you. I don't usually do it like that.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So we just want to start off by saying our Lacey Life originally started in 1988, a few years back. And we had additions, just a few additions each year, and it was mailed out direct mail for several years. And it was basically black and white, 4 pages. It was like an 11 by 17 folded in half and then folded in half again, but it was all black and white. Started off that way. And then the last edition that we could find in the files was September 2008. So I went for several years in the same format, just the black and white, direct mailed. I know, you remember this?
I do.
Rick's like, did you?
There's sometimes a light blue or yellow.
Oh, really? Depending on the printing. So the next iteration started in spring of 2013, and it was a quarterly edition, and it was full color. It still was 4 pages, basically the same size, folded and folded again, and it was also direct mailed. Then I came on board in 2016, the middle, and then in January of 2018. Oh, how come we can't see? Can we move this? There we go. January 2018, we came out with the current format that we have. It is full color. It's a little bit longer. It's 8.5 by 14, so it's a little bit longer in size. It is distributed primarily through our utility bills as an insert. We also have it online on the website, and then we email to the staff and council. So in 2021, we added email distribution with constant contact. People go to the website or links that we can provide them to sign up. We started off with 3, and the 3 is the people that I just emailed it to that had, reached out and just said, hey, can I get an email of it? But now we have about 300. So it is gaining in popularity, not, super popular yet, but we're still working on it. We put out quite frequently, we put out reminders for people to let them know that we can sign up. We do have an open rate of 70%, which is really good, and a click rate, which means that if they click on any of the links in the email. Then in February of 2023, we just wanted to kind of check in with the community and see how we were doing, what people thought of the Lacey Life, or what they would like to see improved. So we promoted the survey via the Lacey Life. You can see right there on the top, and we did it through social media too. And we had about 124 responses. It's not huge, but we got a good indication of what people were looking for. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. So the first question is, can't see it up here, I'm sorry, you guys, but do you read the Lacey Life newsletter? And we first looked at always and usually, and it was 56, almost 56.5%. But when you add this, sometimes it bumped up to 73%. So it's pretty popular. People enjoy reading it. And
So you, in order to be able to take, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no, you're good.
In order to be able to take the survey, you had to go on to the online newsletter and click on the QR code to come to this survey.
We did it through social media too, with just an active link. They could just go that way too.
So you could literally go to the active link without reading the Lacey Life
Yep.
at all. Okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted some clarity.
Yep.
Because I mean, is there, you have, people that say they never read Lacey Life, but don't
How do
you?
they get it? Well, we
Yeah.
also put it on the mail, right do you get a Lacey, your utility bill? So on there, we have a message on there too. So there was a QR code there that was actually just on the utility bill as well.
Got it.
So that if they didn't open it, you know, if they just threw it away or whatever, at least they would see it there too, so that we could get some feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, so then the next question that we reported on is what topics interest you most? As you can see here, what's new in Lacey, community events and recreation, city construction projects. And I always think that, I don't know about you guys, but when you see something going up around town, you're like, what is that? What is it gonna be? And there's never signs, you know, that you just go by and it's like, we don't know. Rick doesn't know either. But yeah, I think people really like to know what it is. And then the favorite things they liked about Lacey Life was the news and the updates about Lacey. Community events, of course, they're real popular, and learning about new city programs and services. So this is kind of what we were also looking to find out is how can we improve it? So the top three, you can see publish bigger editions. So people they like what they see and they know what they like, but they also would like to have it more information, just larger. And then also expanding access by sending via mail and not necessarily in the utility bills. We'll get to that a little bit more in following slides, and then more photos and graphics. A lot of times people like to just look at stuff and not have to read, right?
I wonder if instead of a bigger edition, having a follow-up edition that's more detailed on what specifically they were interested in the letter. Does that make sense?
Are you saying like, so most of the articles do include like a QR code that they can go to a web page or something to get more information, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. But,
No, go ahead and what do you?
well, I mean, because I like it the size it is, because if it was any bigger, I probably wouldn't read it as much, you know, but I read it from cover to back, you know, and I enjoy it. But if it was bigger, I would skim at the best and only read the stuff that I was interested in, you know, instead of reading all of
Is
it.
the bigger edition, is this more content or more detail
Yeah.
or?
It's a great question. And so it was kind of the larger, so we could provide more detail. A common thing that we do hear from people who are providing us feedback on the Lacey Life is, hey, it's great, but there's not a whole lot of detail on here. Or I have to go online, which then adds an additional step for me to be able to access that information. And so something that Donna's about to get into here a little bit later, when we looked at kind of what other jurisdictions are doing, the idea would be to increase potentially what is in there. So content, you know, right now you pull up a Lacey Life and you get 2 paragraphs on a subject and then you're on to the next article. But to be able to really unpack that in a little bit more detail with the additions. So that's certainly something that we are looking at based on feedback from individuals who have said, you know, we'd like more information, and sometimes going online can be a barrier. It's that extra step that we have to take.
So
And the other-
maybe an email or something that's, you know.
We'd love to have transition more people to email as well. But the other point is sometimes I don't have enough space. I mean, it's obviously the real estate is not huge, you know, you don't have a lot of space. So sometimes I have to tell people, okay, I can do that next month, or let's do that on social media. We don't have space in a Lacey Life, that type of thing as well.
We also have to keep in mind that you only have 124 people that responded to the survey.
Yeah.
In a population of 57,000.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
take that for what it's worth.
exactly. Yeah. So here's our current distribution, primarily focusing on the utility bills. So we have almost 29,000 utility customers, and right now the mail is approximately 15,000. So then 300 on email, and whoever accesses it through the website. So we are missing probably almost half of the people by sending out just through the utility bill. And you can see the ones that we're missing. When we recently updated our online paying system, a lot more people signed up for online bills, which is great. But then that also means that they are not getting the Lacey Life. Multifamily units, all of the
Do you
apartments
know
and
if
things like that.
Panorama plays it on the closed caption TV system?
So
Should do
that's
that.
another, big missing portion, which is a very important part of our community. So we're missing those people too. So now we just wanted to briefly touch on our Lacey Communications Plan that we adopted almost a year ago, August 2022. and cover some of the goals and the areas that pertain to the Lacey Life or materials for our city. So the first goal, one of the actions, D, is to create a citywide style guide to ensure consistent branding and messaging of city materials, so that if you get something from the city of Lacey, you know it's a city of Lacey. It looks like everything else. We're not sending something that's green and yellow and then red and blue the next time. And if you, as you can see in this one, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but this implementation is 2024. So we're in 2023 now. And goal number 2, action E, is expand and standardize our communication processes with external stakeholders. Use interactive and innovative communication methods to reach underheard or underrepresented populations. So part of that would also be these people that are missing in our distribution. And goal number 3 is to, and action A is to establish consistent city materials. It's similar to the last one, but creating a citywide style guide, logo, and flag use policy, and pursuing other comprehensive changes to communication materials. And that one is, we're right here in implementation, right, in 2023. So we're on that. So a style guide would give us a consistent look and improve accessibility like ADA across different mediums. So we're gonna, we just got a new website, so that will be kind of our foundation of how we go forward. And then you want everything to be the same, whether it's a press release, it's the Lacey Life, it's a brochure, or the website. We just want it to all look like the city of Lacey. Oh gosh. This kind of got weird. I don't know why it's like that, but anyway. So I was going to give you guys a couple examples of some other newsletters that we printed out. We'll talk about them here too. But so our next step would be to create a style guide that would give us the format, like I said, starting with the foundation of the website. And then we would look to revamp Lacey Life with consideration, taking into consideration the survey results that we found, the style guide.
It's bigger than.
And that one's an email.
It's like
So just so you know. Yeah. And then also taking into account the distribution method, which whether we continue with the direct mail or email or whatever, those are some of the things we'd look at. And I just wanted to give you guys a few examples like that. I printed out 3 of them. So Lakewood has one that is also a quarterly magazine, and it's delivered direct mail to 31,000 residents. And it just has, similar to us, important issues and upcoming events. Then another example that we gave is the Palo Alto that is also mailed to the residents, excuse me, and pretty much similar type things. It's nice and basic layout. And then there's just a couple newsletter examples. One is City of Everett and Bend. And pretty much most of them include, the important city updates and things like that. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're looking, next steps would be, like I said, going to this style guide and then following that up with deciding what we want to do for the Lacey Life. So do you guys have any questions or?
Really?
Carolyn?
No, I'm good. I'm just glad to see the thought that's gone into this. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go down to Panorama and talk to them about putting that on the monthly thing.
Yeah.
The closed caption.
So council members, that, as part of the next steps that Donna just outlined, we're gonna kind of continue to take a look at what could be possibilities for the future of Lacey Life with, taking into account some of the feedback we received now, recognizing that that was also some limited feedback, but, taking into consideration things like, hey, we want to know what's going on in new construction projects around the city. When we were talking about the pages, right now we are very limited on space. And so if we are to, for example, feature all of the city construction projects in the summer, that dominates an entire page of the 2-page document. And so we have to be.
Do we have that on our website?
We do have that on the website, but recognizing that, not everybody is going to find that information on our website, trying to get that information out in a second way. And so just those are the types of articles that we think think that we have the ability to expand access to more information in the future. So that way more people know of, what's going on with, construction projects, what's going on with parks and recreation, free events that are out in the community that they could attend. And then also, great things that, we're doing here at the city beyond construction and events. So, celebrating really, fun and upcoming projects, talking about new initiatives. So we think there's some opportunities to really enhance communications using this particular document, but also taking, a look at all of our other communications as well. And the foundation of that is going to really be based in that style guide that Donna was talking about. So right now, Donna is doing diligence and research on, what style guides look in various other types of organizations. And then thinking about how we could create some sort of standardized system. So, people, members of the public know when it's a City of Lacey material or product moving forward. So we've got some great research going on.
And the other thing that was kind of eye-opening too, which was great, is like I mentioned before, the utility billing, now a lot more people are doing it online, which it wasn't a few years ago. We didn't, number one, we didn't have a good system, but now with the new upgrade, because we did a lot of push out information to let people know, hey, we have a new system, sign up for the system, you can do your bills online. Some people do auto pay and they don't even see their bills, so they don't even do that. So with the really big jump in the number of people that are doing that online, that really kind of made us go, oh wow, we're spending a lot of time and effort to put this together every month. I mean, it literally just comes around right when we get it done. And so we're missing a lot of people that might not otherwise have a way of getting in contact with the city or knowing about it.
I think we're doing everything we can to make this available to the public. I think, you've thought outside the box a lot about this, I'm sure. You're doing what you can. People are either going to be or choose to be engaged or not choose to be engaged. You can find Lacey Life through social media. We have it on Facebook. We have it through email if you want an email. The options are there for people to engage and look at what we're providing every month it's every month, correct? Yeah, for Lacey Life. I'm not sure there's really any need for more out of the box thinking. That's my take on it. And as far as the information that we post on Lacey Life, we can make references to different sections of our website for further information instead of stressing over, is this enough information for this one publication? Are people going to be looking at it and drawing more questions? Sure. I don't know what else to say on that, but I think we're doing everything we can already. That's my take. And I think it's a great publication, what we're doing currently. I don't have any opinion on changing it, do you?
Not really. I mean, Carolyn, did you have something?
Yeah, a couple of quick things. I know early on when you were doing research, probably some of the data you looked at was how people access information on the website as you were looking to redo ours. And research I've seen is that people, you talk about the bite sandwich meal approach to websites. You give them a little bit and then you give them a link to where they can get more, or if they want the whole exhaustive detail, then you can do that. And I think it's great that we have the Lacey Life on our website and it's interactive there already. And I'm just wondering if we could do a little bit more to make the public aware that that's there. Lacey Life, a click away, on the city website. And I mean, that's easy to do on, you could print it on the water bills. We could put it on reader boards. We could hand it out at fairs and festivals, all kinds of things. So there's
College Street.
well, and, I appreciate that point about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. Exactly. But if you make them aware of the different ways they can do that, possibly we might attract a few more horses, so to speak.
And Councilmember Cox, that's certainly something we want to take a look at of who, like, Donna already mentioned, there are a lot of utility customers who are not currently receiving the paper copies. So perhaps doing some outreach, specifically to the accounts that we know that haven't been, to let them know that we have all of these online resources is certainly something we could take a look into doing because they have not been receiving the monthly newsletters to date.
They don't know what they're missing.
So Donna, what's the timeframe or projected timeframe for developing the style guide and coming back with that potentially? And
Hopefully by the end of this year, we're working on it now and doing the research now, so.
okay.
We also recognize that, coming back with a style guide is one thing, implementation is
Yeah.
another thing, because there are so many documents and legacy, designs. And so that'll be a kind of a phased approach for replacing it.
Yeah, to actually get them implemented, yeah.
And then also too, you can look at, I can't remember if you mentioned in your presentation, but looking at a style, but also implementation, is that on a monthly still or quarterly, or how's that?
Exactly.
Because there's
Yep.
different
The
examples out there as
distribution
well.
Did anybody have anything else? I agree with Ed. It's like, well, all we can do is try our best, and it really takes a two-way approach to get things done. But until there's an easy button, just keep plugging away, right?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Great
it.
job,
Yeah,
Donna.
thank you.
All right. Without further ado, we'll go to our second and last agenda item, advisory board stipend program. Shannon.
Good morning, council members. I feel like I've already done some talking today, but I'm excited here to talk about a potential advisory board stipend program. Just for some background, this has been something that the Commission on Equity has been working on and has also, as part of their research on this topic, asked that staff go out to other advisory boards and present the same information and get some feedback. So on this particular project, I have presented it to the Planning Commission, the Parks, Culture and Recreation Board, the Historical Board, as well as the Lacey Youth Council, gathered the feedback that they provided and then returned to the Commission on Equity to review it and then make some recommendations on a potential program. So advisory boards, I'm going to use the term advisory boards, and I mean commissions, task force, and advisory boards here at the city. They serve as a critical point of community input. So most of the advisory boards here, you all appoint and confirm. There are a few exceptions where the city manager makes the appointments. And they are tasked with reviewing and making recommendations to the city and to the council on issues such as land use and zoning, parks, culture and recreation, library services, historical matters, diversity, equity and inclusion, lodging tax funding, youth perspectives. And then, this body could create, special task force to look at very specialized topics. And a good example of that in recent years was the work group on homelessness. Currently, advisory boards here at the city are volunteers. They don't receive a stipend to offset expenses that may occur to participate on the advisory boards. Possible expenses could include finding childcare while you're attending the meetings, finding transportation to meetings, internet access, and there could be other costs that would be associated with participating on an advisory board. These expenses could serve as barriers to participation. And so this is something that the Commission on Equity was tasked with looking at as part of their 2022 work plan or 2023 work plan. So here at the city, we have currently 9 permanent advisory boards as well as 2 regional advisory boards. We also at times have ad hoc bodies. So this could include, like I mentioned, the work group on homelessness. Parks could have a particular work group on a particular subject. And if you want to learn more information on each of the advisory boards, there is information provided in our Lacey Municipal Code Chapter 2, as well as the City Council Policies and Procedure Manual, and finally the Boards and Commissions Handbook. So looking at advisory boards, one of the, silver linings of having, some of our meetings on Zoom is that we were able to track data over the last year. So this information here for Table A is all 2022. And what it's showing, working on the left-hand side, is the advisory board, the number of members that each advisory board has. I do want to make a note that this does not reflect Lacey Youth Council members except for Lacey Youth Council. So if you have a liaison on, say, historical commission, they're not counted here. It's just the non-youth members who are accounted for. The third column is what they meet per frequency. This is generally speaking. Obviously, they can have more meetings if meetings are necessary, but this is what is outlined as part of the city policies and procedures, how many times they meet on average per year. The total meetings anticipated per year takes into account that frequency and just projects what we think they typically meet. And then the column to the right is the total of meetings that they actually had in 2022. This does not include, or this does include joint meetings in this particular case. So looking at Parks, Culture, and Recreation, you can see there are 7 members. They generally meet once per a month. They had 12 anticipated meetings at that frequency, and then the actual meetings they had were 13 in total. So you can see each of the advisory boards and how long and how they've met here on this particular. On table B, we wanted to actually pull the data from 2022 to show, how many meetings they had, what was the duration, and then how many hours were expended on average per meeting. So as an example, going to the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Board, again, you can see it's got 7 members. We've got 11 meetings. This now does not include the joint meetings. The one previously did, which is why you see a reduction from 13 to 11. You can see they expended a total of almost 15 hours across all of their 11 meetings, which means that on average, their meetings lasted about an hour and a half per meeting. Provided some graphs too of the same information where you can see, Planning Commission met the most number of times in 2022, followed by the Commission on Equity, and then you have our Historical Commission. Parks. Hours expended per meeting. You can see Planning Commission had about 21, just over 21 hours expended on meetings. Commission on Equity, 32 and a half. Parks Board, about 15. And then this graph just shows you those average meetings. So you can see the Commission on Equity, the average meeting lasted about just under 2.5 hours. Planning Commission, about an hour and 20 minutes or so. So a stipend program, just to provide an overview, is a way that jurisdictions are using to try to remove barriers to participation. And they do this by offsetting potential direct costs incurred by participating. So including impacts of attending meetings, like I mentioned, childcare, transportation, internet access, and other direct financial impacts. One of the other benefits that other jurisdictions have said about these programs is that they also could reduce burnout. So if you have a larger pool of people who are interested in being an advisory board, you might not have as many people continue on advisory boards because they feel like they have to continue on advisory boards to fill the position. We looked at a couple of things when we were doing our research on these programs, and the first one was stipend amounts. And what we found in our research was that stipends vary by government entity. So for example, some provide all members with the same stipend, others provide stipends only to members experiencing financial hardships, and then others provide tiers of stipends based on financial circumstances. So they ran the gamut. Provided 3 examples here of programs. You can see the City of Bend, Oregon provides stipends of $40 for every advisory board member with attendance requirements. So you have to be present, you have to show up at a meeting, up to $500 annually. The City of Durham, North Carolina provides stipends for members of advisory bodies at a flat rate of $50 per meeting, again with attendance requirements. And then the City of Olympia provides stipends of $25 per meeting attended with the option to waive. Participants who self-certify as low income receive $50 per a meeting attended. What I want to point out with the City of Durham and the City of Olympia is there's no cap like there is with the City of Bend, and I will circle back to that in just a second. By just a second, I mean the next slide. So the next thing we looked about was liability, in particular in connection with the Volunteer Protection Act. So the Volunteer Protection Act is a federal law that was adopted in 1997, and there is a similar state law found in our RCWs. And what this act does is it protects volunteers from personal liability if, among other requirements, volunteers do not receive anything of value in lieu of compensation in excess of $50 on an annual basis. So like I mentioned, some entities have set that as the cap of stipend programs, is that you can receive up to $500 per year, while others don't have that cap. But certainly something that we took into consideration during researching these programs. The other thing we found is that applications vary. So there are some jurisdictions that provide all advisory boards with the stipend, while other jurisdictions only provide select advisory boards. So as an example, I think it was Long Beach, California only provided permanent advisory boards with stipends, and ad hoc boards did not receive stipends. And then tax requirements. So we certainly want to make sure that we don't run afoul of any federal tax requirements. And so making sure that any type of potential program moving forward would comply with all federal tax requirements. How a lot of jurisdictions have set this up is they consider advisory board members kind of like vendors and go through a W-9 process. So in your packets, you will see a draft stipend program for consideration. And just to highlight a couple of things that were included within that draft program is first and foremost that participants would need to opt into a program. So it wouldn't be an automatic, you'd have to fill out the appropriate forms to be part of this program. And this would occur, within the first 60 days of being appointed or the first 2 months of every year. So every year, an advisory board member would have to go through this process and say, yes, I'd like to participate. And if they don't go through with the forms, then it is a no, I'm not participating in this program. What's included is a $50 stipend per meeting attended for most advisory boards, with the exception of Lacey Youth Council, which would be a $25 stipend per meeting attended by Lacey Youth Council members. There also would be some advisory boards that would not receive stipends, and those would be, for example, regional bodies. Each of those boards that would receive the stipend is provided in the draft policy in attachment 1. Stipends would be distributed to advisory board members at a minimum of twice a year. This is certainly something that, should this program move forward, that we would be working very closely with our clerk's office and finance department to find out what would be the best way to make sure that individuals were receiving their stipends. Stipends would need to follow all relevant tax requirements. Like I just mentioned, regional advisory board members and also council members and city employees would not be eligible to receive a stipend as participating on an advisory board. There would be an annual reporting to the city council on the impacts of the programs. And this program, if it was to move forward, would be implemented by the city manager's office with support from the finance department and the city clerk's office. Something we'd also have to do before any potential program, if it was to move forward, would be to take a look at our Lacey municipal codes. There are certain codes that we would have to update in order to have this program started. And then another thing that, looking at kind of changing the system, if we were to change it, this would provide a good opportunity maybe to look at collecting some data on our current advisory board and their makeup, as well as capturing select demographic information for future pools. So we can see, moving forward, if this program is having an impact, what type of impact it's having, or if we need to reevaluate the program as a whole. So like I mentioned early on in my presentation, that I went to a lot of advisory boards to get some feedback on this program as we evaluated it. And I want to go over some of the points of feedback and just provide some responses. So I think first and foremost, I want to highlight that there were a lot of advisory board members who commented that they served on boards because they wanted to help the community and not because they wanted to receive a stipend. At the same time, there were a lot of community or advisory board members who also commented that a program like this could really help lower barriers to participation in government and increase underrepresented or unheard voices in the community. There were certainly concerns over if we were to move forward with collecting data and how that would be done. And certainly if we were to move forward with that, that information would be separate from any decision-making for advisory boards. That would not be something that would be accessible by anybody appointing. This would be something that would be pulled at an aggregate level and we wouldn't know on an individual basis. There were questions about the effectiveness of a potential tiered system and also concerns that $25 per meeting would be too low. There were questions about what were the existing gaps in representation in the city. And so, we mentioned, for example, with advisory boards that we don't have good data on that. And that's why it'd be something that we'd be looking forward to starting to collect as part of this program and then to track as we move forward so we can report out on, again, what kind of impacts this program would have. We do have information on, engagement. And so, for example, a lot of survey data that we've done for past surveys has shown that there are gaps in communities taking those surveys. So certainly we do understand that there are some gaps in representation from what the city is currently collecting. And then there was a question about other efforts being performed by the city to increase representation and remove barriers to government participation. And so we're certainly looking at that, not just with this program, but other things that the city can do. So for example, taking a look at the overall process for advisory board appointments is something that we would like to do too in the future. There are questions about how the city would track metrics for the program, and that's certainly something that if it was to move forward, we would want to make sure that we are tracking metrics to see if this is actually, again, a program that is reducing barriers. There are questions about how the program would be funded if it moved forward. And then there were questions about Lacey Youth Council and their volunteer hours and how that would impact their volunteer hours that they collect for school. So after going out to all the advisory boards and getting some feedback and taking that information back to the Commission on Equity, the Commission on Equity recommended moving forward with the draft advisory board stipend program at their April 24th meeting. And so I'm here today, obviously, to review that program, which I just did, and to see if the committee would like to forward this program to the full Lacey City Council for review at a future work session. As far as the financial impact goes, we think the program is likely to cost around $20,000 to $45,000. Now you can see that's 40 participants to 90 participants. Just to give you all some background, I think our total participants is around 65. So we definitely included a pretty significant buffer. And that's because we could have ad hoc work groups that might be called on a year. So we wanted to make sure we built in a little bit of a buffer on that end. And this would also really depend on the opt-in rates. Talking with a jurisdiction that has a program like this, they were saying that their opt-in rate is about 25%. So it could actually be much less than what we are proposing as a financial impact. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
I'll start off just briefly by saying, civil service is just that, it's service. It's not selfless service. It's like volunteering. If you're volunteering and you're getting paid for it, I believe not just these committees, but my position is not a career position. It's something that you're supposed to be doing because it's the right thing to do. That you want a better community. If in my opinion, if we're going to pay anybody, it would be the youth council members, just so they could get an Uber ride here in case they didn't have a car or their parents weren't able to bring them. If they had parents, who knows what the situation is out there. If it cost us anything, I would want to see a reduction in my own salary, even though it's part-time service for this, and it's elected body. These are appointees, appointments. I served on the planning commission. I know how many hours you put into that. But are you doing that for the right reasons? Or are you doing it because you might get a few bucks? And, there's other ways of getting paid too. There's fringe benefits of serving on these committees and these commissions. You can add it to your resume, especially if you're a student trying to get into a better school, I don't support this at all. And I'd rather see me in my position get no money at all across the board. But I mean, unless it comes to the youth council, and I already touched base why. You know, they have talk about barriers, you know, so that's just my feel on it. And I'm the first one to will take a pay cut, you know, so that's my 2 cents. Anyways, what do you got, Ed or Carolyn?
Stedman, it's not very often that you and I see eye to eye on things, and we do. I totally agree. These are commissions that serve at the pleasure of the city council. We appoint these members in the various different boards, and they are citizens that are volunteers to help us make amicable decisions about law and policy and how the city is run. To pay them, I would almost speculate and say that maybe this should be a voter decision and not our decision. If so, should these folks be elected instead of appointed? It just doesn't seem like this is the smart way to go. And these are volunteer boards. These are folks that we want their input from, and to pay them for it. I have conflicts with this as well.
So, I mean, Carolyn, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. And I've been part of conversations about this with other boards and commissions. And one of the things that we hear is that this can elevate the richness of community participation in government. I mean, I look at this screen and I see a bunch of white faces. I see a bunch of people who probably live fairly comfortably and who probably had no problem paying their cable bill to get to this meeting or driving their vehicle to get to this meeting.
That is absolutely absurd.
And we're missing out on people who, if they had a little help to get there, might actually come. And so with what we have right now, I think we risk having an echo chamber of, you know, hearing our own opinions reflecting back to us. And as the most diverse community in Lacey, I think it behooves us to try to remove barriers for people to participate. So I would urge you guys to think about this a little more and let the full council at least consider it.
No, I think it's, you know, a lot like getting public participation in our last agenda meeting and how the best way to do it and how it's always a struggle to get people to be involved, right? But it's like voting, same thing with voting. What's next? Do we pay people to show up to the ballot boxes and vote?
There you
You
go.
know, do we, you know, they say food and drink, you know, you want people to show up at a festival, offer free food and drink, and yeah, they come. But are they coming for the right reasons? Are they serving for the right reasons? Again, I'll say, you know, even when I didn't have money, Carolyn, I volunteered. I've been a lifelong volunteer my whole life. And even when I didn't have money, I'd walk there, I'd take a bus, I'd get a ride from a friend. You know, that's what touched me on the youth council thing. Because I lived 3.5 miles away from City Hall or the high school. So it wasn't always easy to participate in extracurricular things that, especially, you know, the school government positions, you know, or clubs or whatever. So that makes sense to me. When you're an adult, you know, there's different motivations in different ways. If you want something bad enough, you're going to do it. You're going to find a way. You'll help people that help you find a way. And again, I'd take no money to do this, but that means it'd be across the board. You know, it shouldn't be about the money. I know a lot more people on our council and on these committees serve on way more, go to way more meetings than I do. You know, I have 3 committees and 3 boards that I sit on. And some of you do like 11 or 12, you know, and yeah, that's gas money. It's time but it's like, I think all those resources spent are better when you're doing it not for anything else in return, but a better community. You know what I mean? So Rick, you got anything?
Well, I just want to kind of add on to what the commission and equity recommendation that came out of that, as well as all the conversations with all the advisory boards, because it did get a lot of meeting time with the various advisory boards, get some feedback. And that was there was a lot of comment and of course Shannon can go in more detail about that because she was in those conversations. But from what I understand, there's a lot of comment about, most of those individuals saying the same thing. Hey, we have volunteered, it's a volunteer program. But they also, as they talked through it, saw how other people may want to volunteer, but may not be able to because it's not just the youth council, maybe having an Uber, but somebody be able to have a little bit to pay for a babysitter or something, those type of things. And that's what came out of their conversation, which I think is why ultimately the recommendations came up is the stipend program, but also let's say you have to fill out the paperwork to do it. It's not just automatic. So those people that still have the sense I want to volunteer and don't need the money, they don't have to accept it.
Well,
But it does provide that. For the
Here's
others.
another thing to think about too, and I agree with you, Stephen. I mean, you've hit a lot of very important points, but the public knows about these various boards and commissions, okay? You have people like Scott Goodwin, who does not try to run for city council, does not try to get put on any of the boards and commissions, but he spends time reading about them. He emails the contacts, he has dialogues, and that's what his time will allow. And it's the same for other members of the public. You may not have the time or the ability to be part of the COE, but you do have all the members of the board. You do have their contact information. You can make an impact through that board by sharing your thoughts and your concerns through that board and develop a sense of advocacy. This may not be your best time and ability to engage and be part of that particular board because you may have childcare issues or you may work full time, whatever the case may be, but you still have 5 minutes for some level of engagement with some of these members that already are on these commissions and boards. So when we talk about fairness, what is fairness? How do you legislate fairness? How do you mitigate fairness? It might seem fair to you, the end result, but it may not be fair to someone else. So I get frustrated personally when we talk about how do we legislate fairness? How do we make this fair for everybody? It's impossible. There's always going to be someone who feels disadvantaged or disenfranchised. I think what we have right now are some great people that have stepped up and volunteered their time and effort and energy to help our council make better decisions. And I fail to see how these stipends are going to make any kind of impact. I mean, it's not very much money to begin with. I mean, $50 is not, that's nothing in this day and age, in this economy. So I fail to see how that's going to make an impact for someone who is struggling but wants to play a part. I don't see how that's going to make a difference.
I could see how things like maybe tools to do the job. Like, I mean, we don't own these iPads. We don't own these city phones. You know what I mean? Maybe if the city was to provide that access to where if they, missed the bus or didn't have a ride or were in the hospital or dealing with everyday life, right? Just life happens, right? They can still be a part of the community, of the conversation and part of their city and part of the vision and the implementation of where their city is going. But when it comes down to a dollar value, to me, that's where I cross the line. I mean, again, for the kids are, I remember being a kid and I was along for the ride. You got very little control over your life except for maybe a few things in it. And that's where I'm like, okay, if that makes it easier for them to because their voice is valuable. You know what I mean? We don't even consider half the stuff that's very important to them because you know what? We're not teenagers anymore. You know what I mean? So that I can see, but anything else is a real struggle for me to support unless it's a tool. A tool has money value too. And again, you're enriching yourself as well. You know what I mean? You can put it on a resume, you can put it on an application, you can, right? And it carries weight being a part of these organizations and doing better for your community. So that is payment too, Don't think that selfless service isn't something that people admire very, very strongly. You can't get into Harvard. You can't get out of high school now without having, 100 hours or volunteer service now. That's awesome. How many people wouldn't have graduated when I did, if that was a requirement? So I don't know, I could beat this horse to death, but Carolyn, go ahead.
Well, our Commission on Equity put an awful lot of work and study into this, and it feels bad to me that that would not be heard by the full council. So I'd like to offer a motion that this committee recommend that the full council hear the presentation in a work session and that we make no recommendation, yay or nay, on this.
I'll second that because I think it should go through the process. This shouldn't be the end of the process, you know what I mean? And I'm gonna support this, but it's gonna be a heavy lift to get me to, I mean, I'll always keep my ears open and my heart to any kind of discussion, whether it's
Was
getting a
it-
stipend or.
Did you second that, Steph?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So no matter what the topic is, I'm always gonna keep an open mind and an open ear and an open heart to the conversation until the actual vote is taken. And even then, we could always bring it up in the future and vote on something again. Let it run through this process. I've stated my concerns and how important I think civil service is in the volunteer form to the point where I'm willing to do it voluntarily too. I have.
Mike, you want to take the vote?
Yeah, all right. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, passes unanimously. It's awesome. I think we've reached the end of our agenda item and or end of our agenda. So if there's not anything else for the good of the order, anything? No, okay. I'll close the meeting at 11:51.